There's a wonderful philosopher, Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Power of Myth, because he studied the Greeks, the Romans, the American Indians, the African tribes. All these cultures, he discovered, had a similar theme throughout their mythology, and he called it the journey of the hero. And the hero goes through fire, is tested by fate, like a phoenix is transformed, and then he resurrects and saves humanity. This story is told over and over again, and he called it the hero with 1,000 faces, because he's been told through so many different cultures throughout history. And it's like this collective unconscious that we all have, this need for redemption, this need for a hero like that. And for us, it's Batman. I mean, it's such a clear parallel to those earlier stories. And I think that's why it resonates with people so much. He's such a noble character. I had a young woman come up to me in Chicago at a Comic-Con, and she said, "I've always wanted to meet you. You're the reason that I got out of the projects." She said, "I grew up on the South Side in the projects. Everyone I grew up with is either in jail or dead." She said, "And I am a professional woman and I have a life, and it's because of Batman." I said, "Well, wait a minute. I said, "You got you out of there, and God bless you for doing that." I said, "I'm so proud of you and happy for you that you've made something with your life." She said, "No, but every day after school, when my friends were getting into trouble, I had you, and you were teaching me these lessons about morality." So it's amazing to be a part of this character who's so noble that he's helped some kids out of some really terrible situations. And I have people come up all the time, my parents broke up when I was young, and it was you that was babysitting me when I was little. And he's just this very ennobling character that has been a part of so many people's lives. And when you're the voice of a cartoon, you're the most intimate part of people's imaginations. You go to a place in their imaginations that live action characters can't go. And you become a part of their concept of what Batman is. And just today, so many people came up and said, "When I read the cartoons, I hear your voice. You're the voice I associate with it." And it's just that I was the voice of the cartoon, So it's such a blessed thing for an actor to be a part of, a character like this who has such a profound impact on so many people's lives. And he's so complicated. He's such an anti-hero in a way. He's such a dark hero. He's screwed up, he's the first to admit it. It's the reason he can't fall in love. He can't make personal commitment. He wants to, like in Mask of the Phantasm, when he begs his parents at their grave to release him from the covenant that he's made to them because he's fallen in love with this wonderful woman. Or in the Revenge, what was the movie I just did? The Joker?
The Killing Joke.
Killing Joke. Yeah, Kevin. Killing Joke. It's just a senior moment. He falls in love with Barbara Jordan, and he actually makes the physical commitment, but he can't go the next step. He's a dog when it comes to that. And he hates himself for that. He wants to be able to, but he's human, and it's his failing that he can't make those personal connections. But he uses that weakness to devote himself to society at large. And I think people just love that about him, that he's so flawed and he still does so much good. How's that?
That is a perfect intro. So before we begin talking about the animated series, what did you do before you became the voice of Batman? What was your background beforehand?
Well, that's what's interesting. I kind of stumbled into this. Batman is the first animated character I ever auditioned for. Talk about hitting a home run. I mean, my God, your first time up at bat, and you're working for 25 years. I went through Juilliard. I was classically trained actor. I worked off-Broadway for Joseph Papp at the Public Theater, done a lot of Shakespeare. Theater was my background, and it was my passion. And I did a lot of the Greek classics. And it was I was training for a world that was just eclipsing. I was training for a profession that you couldn't make a living in anymore. This was in the 70s, and I didn't realize that. I got out and I started working, and I was working all the time. But you know, when you're making $200 a week doing off-Broadway, you can't pay the rent, you can't buy food, you can't live. So a lot of Broadway and off-Broadway actors do commercials in New York, and that's how they supplement. And they do voiceovers. So I did commercial voiceovers, and I went to LA to shoot a series, and I was out there, and I had a commercial voiceover agent, and he said, you know, they're seeing people for a new animated series at Warner Brothers, Batman, and why don't you go in on it? And I said, Batman? I said, that character's been around forever. Hasn't that cartoon already been on the air? He said, no, it's never been a cartoon. It was just the Adam West series. And so I didn't even know that it had never been a cartoon. So I really went in as a complete blank slate, just a stage actor. That was my only background. I didn't even have a lot of background in comics. People always ask me what kind of comics you read when you were little. I had a very traditional, strict Catholic upbringing. I went to Catholic schools. We didn't have comic books. I mean, we just didn't. We were given, you know, Dickens. I was given more classic things to read. And my father was an Irish immigrant, totally self-educated, never went to school, and he was a voracious reader. And so he got us all reading at a very early age, and I still read enormously. He had lots of other problems, but he was a great reader. So I read. That's the one good thing I inherited from him. And so I went in with a completely blank slate, and I met Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Andrea Romano, and Alan Burnett. I mean, talk about the gold standard. And I didn't even know who any of these people were. But this is 87? No, wait a minute, 92. This is 92. So I don't even know if they knew who they were then. You know, this is really early. And they said, do you know anything about Batman? And I said, well, I know the Adam West series. And they went, no, that's not what we're doing. We all love Adam West, but that's not what we're doing. We're going for, this is film noir. This is back to the Dark Knight legend. And I said, well, I don't know what that is. So they told me he lost his children. He's lost his parents as a child. He's been avenging their deaths. He's living in the cave. He's unable to reconcile these two identities. I said, wow, you're telling a classic story. So this is like Hamlet. And they said, well, no one's made that comparison. I said, well, let me just use my imagination and I'll see what I can come up with. And I put myself into the darkest, most painful, the huskiest kind of place I could go. And I came up with this sound, and they went, you're hired. And they had seen almost, I think, 700 people up to that point. But I honestly believe acting is so much about choices. It's about choices you make. There are usually a dozen actors who can do any role as well as you've done it, or better, but they just didn't make the right choice in the audition. They never know what they're looking for until they see it, and they'll never tell you. You go into an audition, you say, what do you want? And they go, show us what you got. They'll never tell you because they really don't know. So it's really making the right choice. And I just happened to make the right choice. That was a home run. Because people come up to me at cons all the time and go, listen to me do you. And they do a very convincing Batman. And I say, well, now I'm going to have to kill you, you know. But it's that I came up with the idea. That's what they pay for. That's what they pay actors for, is their imagination, is to come up with the idea. Once you've come up with the idea, there are a lot of people who can imitate Mark Hamill really well. But Mark came up with the idea. And when he does it, he embodies it. You know, he really invests himself in it. It's amazing. You're in a booth with Mark. He becomes so physicalized. You know, he like takes over the microphone. You're opposite him and you're going like this. You know, you feel like he's going to devour the microphone. He becomes so physicalized. But that's why, and the both of us come from the theater, so we love to interact with each other. There's something about theater actors, they're kind of like children. And it's like children in a playground who really play well together. And it's just fun. And Andrea is great at casting wonderful, generous actors. You never meet a selfish actor in an Andrea Romano cast show. It's amazing. She has great taste in people because generosity, like in life, generosity is so important. And when you're in a room with other actors, you want someone who's giving to you and who will give back to you when you give to them, who can receive, you know? Being able to receive is just as important as being able to give. And there are a lot of selfish people in the world, you know, a lot of takers. And there are a lot of takers who are actors. And you give and give to them and they don't give you anything back. That never happens in an Andrea Romano show, which is why all the Batman episodes are so awesome. Because it's not just, you know, me or Mark or Roddy McDowell or, you know, the different actors who were in it. It's all the cast. It's everyone, all the cast, the smaller characters, everyone who comes in pitches in. And the booking sessions were so much fun. And that has carried on throughout, now into the games. So it's always been a very unique world to be a part of. Not only because the characters are so rich, but because the actors that they choose to bring in are so generous.
I agree with Andrea Romano. She's incredible, and I've heard from many actors that she's wonderful to work with. And while you were developing Batman, and I've heard that you are the person to introduce a different voice for Bruce Wayne and a different voice for Batman, to have that different.
Well, it just made sense to me that, again, that came out of having a blank slate. I said, wait a minute. This is the richest guy in town with the biggest house on the hill. Everyone knows his family tragedy. He's incredibly handsome. Every available woman wants him. And he puts on a mask and no one knows it's him? I said, seriously? Come on. Let me kind of fool around with it a little bit. And they said, well, what would you do? I said, well, since I'm doing this voice for Batman, what if I just use more of my own voice for Bruce? And then, actually, if we're going to make him a real playboy, let's give him a little irony. Let's give him I used more of my upper register early on. And there was a lot of color to it. There was a lot of irony to him originally, which I loved playing. It was almost like early Cary Grant in those comedies he used to do. You know, it was a lot of, oh, Andrea, and I sort of, a lot of double entendres and innuendo, which they loved, because then when he became Batman, it was so convincing that no one knew who this was. But when the show came back, see, we were recording them for 6 months. We started doing them in '92. They didn't go on the air till '93. We were recording them for 6 months before they even started coming back from the artists. You do, for those of you who don't know, you do the recordings first, like a radio play. So you have a lot of input into the scripts and into the timing of the scripts. And then they take those recordings and they send them off to the artists, and they paint to the recordings. And then it comes back from the artists when they sync up the vocal track with the visual, the art, and there's a process called ADR. And there are always like extra mouth flaps that need to be filled, or they may have too many mouth flaps that you need to put new dialogue for, and you sort of clean up the soundtrack. But because you're the first stage, you have a lot of input. But because it was the first stage in a show that had never been done before in '92, we didn't really know visually what it was going to be like. We had they had shown us sketches of what our characters would like, but we didn't really know the whole world. We didn't know it was going to be painted on black. So when the first footage came back, it was so beautiful and noir in this dark, gritty, industrial world that they realized that the light, Cary Grant kind of Bruce Wayne was too light. It was too jarring. So they had me actually go back and re-record the first 6 episodes, just the Bruce Wayne lines. They said they did like the difference, but just tone it down. Bring it back closer to the Batman sound, to make him more sober. So that's the history of the two voice sound.
So since you record first and then they do the art after,
Yeah.
in a way, and you knew the theme, or it was very noir, that dark deco, that look, did that influence the way you voiced the character, since you kind of had an idea of what they were going for?
Yeah, that's what I mean by when they say they show you a sketch of the character. Like they showed Mark a sketch of the Joker. They showed me a sketch of what Batman was going to look like. Man-Bat, I don't know if you remember that character. They showed, was that Ron Perlman? I don't remember who that, I don't remember who that was.
Clayface?
He was Clayface, but I think he may have been, who was, oh no, you know who Man-Bat was? Mark Singer. Remember Mark Singer? He was an actor from the 80s, I think. Yeah, he was Man-Bat. It's all coming back to me now. But they'll show you a sketch, and because that inspires the sound you're gonna give for the character. But it's such an interesting. I'm in so much awe of the actors who do this, because I'm basically Batman. That's the character I do, and it's a voice that I've become so identified with that they don't like to use me for a lot of other voices. Occasionally they'll use me for an extra, hey buddy, like a cop or something like that. But they don't like to use me for other characters. And usually when they book actors, they can use you for 3-4 different characters, and they save a lot of money by doing that if you're covering a lot of characters. So you get people like, Tara Strong, or, really Phil Lamar, who can do such interesting and varied voices. In the same episode, they'll do different voices that are just wonderful. I haven't been allowed to do a lot of that because my voice is so identified with Batman that they're afraid, the audience would hear it. But I'm in awe of a lot of the actors who work in voice work. A lot of people think that voice acting is different than acting, and it's really not. It's acting. They always say, "How do you get into voice acting?" I said, "Well, you study acting. You go to acting school. You go into regional theater. You work on the stage. You do whatever you would do to get into acting, because in voice acting, you're embodying. You're not making funny noises. A lot of people think it's making funny character voices. It's not. It's embodying a character. It's bringing a character to life, but just with your voice. So you don't have the luxury of facial expression that people have on camera. You don't have your body. You only have your voice. But if you do it too broadly, it becomes cartoony, and no one believes it. Especially with the way cartoons have gone, they become much more real. So it's a funny line you walk. You have to color it, but you can't color it with primary colors. You know what I mean? It's got to be subtle. And people who specialize in this are just really to be respected. They're really wonderful.
We know that the cartoon, even though it's a kid's cartoon, it has a lot of darker themes. Even the color palette is dark. When you were recording the episodes and you knew this was a kid's cartoon, did you feel that it was for kids? Because now, for people who watched it originally, and even today, when they compare the animated series to even the cartoons now, they feel it was way ahead of its time in terms of themes and presenting these classic characters. Did you feel that it was for the age range, for the demographic that it was supposed to be?
Interestingly, when it first aired, it was on Fox, and it was a primetime show. So we were not really aiming it towards a young audience. We were aiming it towards an evening audience. And Bruce and Paul, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, are passionate about Batman and about their art, and they did not want to talk down to the audience, and none of us did. They hired mostly actors from like me, who hadn't done a lot of animation. They hired mostly actors from film or TV or stage. So a lot of people would come in, and we'd kind of have to break them in about, you can't rustle your pages, you can't step on each other's lines. There's certain technical things you have to know about recording this stuff, because a lot of the people hadn't been in booths before, because they were going for a more adult sound. They didn't want the cartoony sound at all. They wanted drama. And so the only, I would say, gesture they made to it being PG was that they were careful that no one ever died, children were never endangered, and there was no foul language. There's a certain thing with standards and practices that children's programming, they're protective. As crazy as you think Hollywood is, there are standards, and they won't allow endangering the life of a child in a show that's geared toward children, or death. That's why in Batman there was always what was called the recovery moan. Someone would fall off a 30-story building and then go, ugh. I think, how could they be recovery moan? The guy just fell off the Empire State Building. Say, no, well, they can't die. They can't die. But that became a wonderful thing about Batman. No one died. He never killed anybody. He doesn't kill. He doesn't shoot. He locks him up in Arkham. But yeah, so that was the one gesture they made to it being a younger audience, because they wanted a broader audience. But then with The Killing Joke, they realized, look, this is a very adult story. If you're going to tell this story, you just got to know that you're not going to tell it to children. This is not a story for children. Graphic novels are not only for children, now especially. So The Killing Joke was an adult graphic novel, and they made it R-rated, which is the first time there was a Batman R-rated show.
The themes were, of course, more mature, adult-oriented, but also the relationships that Batman has with the cast in the show were three-dimensional. It made the characters just come to life and really resurrected some obscure characters. It made Mr. Freeze a more sympathetic villain. And I kind of wanted to ask you about your working with characters like the voice of Commissioner Gordon and Alfred Pennyworth, because on the show it seemed like they both acted as a kind of father figure to Batman. And what was your experience like working with them?
Well, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. Was the original Alfred, and what a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. I mean, he was really old school actor. He'd always come in very well dressed, and the rest of us are coming in, grungy. Hey, how you doing? And he came in, looking like he'd just come from a board meeting. Just such a wonderful, and he was very paternal towards all of us. He'd been in the business forever. I saw him on the FBI when I was a child. But that again is Andrea, testament to her, bringing in such wonderful actors. Michael Ancier was Mr. Freeze. What a passionate performance he gives, trying to bring his wife back to life. We saw some really amazing performances in those studios. They would really want you to dig deep, especially with Batman, anything to do with his father. There was always a real. They would let me go as far as I could, and as passionately as I could, and as realistically as I could. And actors draw on their life experiences, and that's something you learn in the theater. I had a very complicated relationship with my father. I had to reconcile with him as an adult. I was on my own from the time I was about 17, and he was a very complicated, angry man, and I could draw on that yearning to want a paternal relationship that I never had, with Bruce's loss for what must have been a beautiful paternal relationship. So you can draw on your own emotions for my lack of that relationship, for what he lost in that relationship. And I really drew on that at that scene. I love referencing it again when he's pleading with his parents in Mask of the Phantasm. it's such a primal scene where he's asking them to release him from this vow he's made. I felt myself at that moment sort of pleading with my father to be a father, to you just draw on those things as an actor. And Andrea would really let you go and really get deep. And there were some wonderful performances in those recordings.
Definitely. And the dynamic you have with Mark Hamill as Joker on the show is, I think, for many people, one of the best interpretations of their relationship, even within comics. So,
well, I've often said I think that Mark defines Batman, and Batman defines Mark.
Yes.
We're sort of the yin and the yang. I don't think either would be fully themselves without the other. That's just the way they were created by the writers, I think. So we've always had this really wonderful dynamic relationship between the two of us, because I know he feels the same way. And that's what's so wonderful about The Killing Joke. At the end, that confrontation is so great. And you don't know what happens. That's what's really cool.
Well, since you brought that up, do you have a theory?
Well, yeah, but I'm not going to share
You're
it.
not going to share? I was going to ask, because Alan Moore, the writer of the graphic novel, he said it's up to the reader's interpretation.
It is. It's totally. And I love the fact that they left it like that. But it is Batman laughing alone at the end. But
that's all we're getting.
That's all you're going to get out of me. No, I won't do it.
So,
you want any questions? You want to do?
Oh,
or you want more?
A little bit more,
Okay.
and then we will open up to the
Okay.
floor, because I do want people to ask questions.
Great.
I know they have tons of questions for you, but I did want to touch upon Mask of the Phantasm shortly, about Andrea Beaumont and Bruce's relationship with her. What are your thoughts on Batman being in a romantic relationship? Do you think it's even possible? Do you think, or who is a love interest that you would like Batman to be with?
Well, that was touched on in Mask of the Phantasm, and then not again, really, until The Killing Joke, which is amazing. It was like 23 years. Because he's such a... I don't think he can. The character can't, because he would be resolved if he was in a successful relationship. And the whole tension of Batman is his lack of resolution, is what he cannot resolve. And that's why he's trying to heal the world. If he was healed himself, he wouldn't need to do it anymore. You know what I mean? I suspect that that's the driving force behind him. And that's what he says, essentially, to Andrea Beaumont in Mask of the Phantasm is, my vow. I have this vow. So I think that's what makes him such a tragic hero. He can't be healed.
I agree. I think in comics and other media, we see that even when Batman does try to form that relationship with a character, something happens, or he either chooses justice instead of following his heart in a way. And I think that is a true defining characteristic of Batman. Also, when just moving forward, I guess, in your line of Batman and Batman Beyond, you are voiced as an older Bruce Wayne, and you have that kind of father-son relationship with Terry McGinnis. What was that like, going from the animated series being Batman and then going to Batman Beyond and almost...
Like, wait a minute, why aren't I the star of the show?
How was that transition?
I was so used to being the star. No, it was fun. It was great because Will Friedle's a wonderful actor, and he was really young when we started doing that, and we developed a great relationship. It was fun. I sort of had the Ephraim Zimbalist role in that, it was interesting playing him at 80 years old, but still with the passion. He still has the passion in him. He's still, like now, I still look at the world with 25-year-old eyes. I'm always amazed when I see this guy in the mirror. I'm like, who is that? Inside, you don't feel any different, And I feel that for old Bruce Wayne. He's still got the kick of, a 25-year-old, but he knows he just can't do it anymore. And that's got to kill him.
So you go from the animated series to Batman Beyond, and then you go into an even larger ensemble cast in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, which is one of my favorite shows. So what was it like working with that voice cast and being part of that team?
Well, the interesting thing was when you're used to being the focus of the show, you have, 30, 40, 50 pages to tell your story. But when you're one of 7 stars, you may have, especially Batman, who's a man of few words, you may have 4 or 5 lines in an episode. And you've got to make your presence known and make your statement, but not oversell it. You can't overact or kill it. So you've just got to give it the weight of the character and establish that character in very few words. And that got to be a real challenge for me, to project his identity in so few lines, because he was the outsider in the Justice League. He's sort of the moody, broody conscience of the group, So he never had a lot to say, but everything always had to have enormous weight to it. And the cast was great. It was wonderful actors. Susan Eisenberg is here, and Phil Lamar,
yes.
They're here. It was a great cast of actors to work with. So we all got along really well. It's just that Batman is a man of few words, and I didn't have a lot to say in a lot of those episodes. And I had to establish the character very quickly. So that was the challenge there. And then after that, you want to go on to the games?
Oh, we will.
Okay.
We will. I just wanted to bring up, speaking of Susan Eisenberg, who was Wonder Woman, and I spoke with her recently on my podcast, and we talked about Wonder Bat. We talked about the flirtation between Wonder Woman and Batman and Justice League Unlimited. So what are your thoughts on them together? Because a lot of fans like the idea of Wonder Woman and Batman together.
Batman cannot have a successful relationship. It's not, you keep trying to push me there. It's
People
not
want
gonna
it to happen.
It's not going to happen. He's got issues. He says that in one of the shows. He said, I'm a guy with issues. He's just, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, when I asked her, she was like, oh, I love the idea of them, but she agrees that it probably can't happen. No. That is unfortunate. So yes, we can go on to the games. So the Arkham series, which is amazing.
Amazing.
I am a fan. And the story, first of all, the storyline it's for a video game is so amazing.
What a great idea that they had, that all of these incredible characters, all of these villains, and Batman is as much about the villains as it is about Batman. I mean, the most incredible villains, they're all locked up in this insane asylum. How incredible is that, When I first saw the first one, Arkham City, I thought, well, this is, huh? Oh, that was the second one, Arkham City. Arkham Asylum was the first one. I thought, this is brilliant that he gets trapped in the asylum and, with all these people. The problem with recording games is when you record episodes, you're all together. Like I was saying, it's like recording a radio play. You have all that interaction from the other actors. They're feeding you energy. 2 hours goes by like that. And you record a whole episode in 2 hours. That's it. A game like Arkham Knight, the last game, was 37,000 lines of dialogue. That's how much had to be recorded. Because, depending on how the game's played, all those variables have to be recorded. So I was in the booth, and because of the way they're structured, each actor has to be recorded alone. So you're not being fed. I wasn't being fed by Mark. I wasn't being fed by anybody. I was alone in a booth, 4 hours at a block, and then you're given an hour off for lunch, and then you're 4 hours for the afternoon session. And that would happen 5 days in a row for a week. And then you're given a couple of weeks off, and then they'd come in with more. So every 3 or 4 weeks, I'd go in for a week of just 8-hour days of just line after line after line after line after line after, and it's always in the Batman voice. And, okay, get out of here. Oh, great. Could you do a little irony? Get out of here. Okay, that's great. Keep the irony, keep the anger, a little smile. Get out of here. I mean, you're doing it over and over and over, 3 takes of each one, and then by the end of the week, you're like, yeah. You're just, words aren't coming out anymore. You're like, you're not able to speak English. It's mind-bending. It's not why you become an actor, and it's really a job, but it's a really challenging job because you're keeping the character alive, alone in a complete dark vacuum, with no one feeding you energy, and line after line after line, out of the blue, out of nowhere, you're keeping the situation alive in your head, the emotional life, the character voice alive, and then you're doing different types of takes on each line. You're sweating by the end of the day, and your voice is completely shot, and so it's no fun recording the games. It's really hard work. But then when you see it at the end, and when it's all put together, God, you're so proud to have been a part of that, because it's such a beautiful piece of art. But constructing it couldn't be further from what I learned at Juilliard. It just is totally the other end of the spectrum. You have to be totally self-fed. And I really admire people who do games, who record games. I understand how hard it is and how good they have to be to pull it off.
Do you play the games? No?
I'll confess to something. At one of these sessions, I said, "Oh, of course, I play the games, they're great." And someone said, "What program do you use?" I said, "The one that it came with." They went, "Whoa, busted." I'm just old, what can I tell you? I don't play the games. Why did you ask me?
It's fine. We appreciate you voicing Batman for the
Thank
games.
you.
I don't think it would be the same, the franchise,
Thank you.
without it.
You can't lie at any of these things anymore. I've learned that. You have to be totally honest, because everyone knows everything from the internet. And one of these things, someone yelled out, "How old are you?" And I thought, well, that's pretty rude. They don't deserve an honest answer. So I said, "Oh, well, I'm 41. And then the guy said, "Whoa, dude, rough life." I said, "Rough life?" It's because he knew I was lying. Everyone knows how old you are. I'm 42.
So you came back for The Killing Joke, and I've heard from Mark Hamill, and he said that if he wanted to come back as Joker, that would be the movie, the book that he would want to.
What a performance for him. Yeah,
yes, definitely. Did you, well, first of all, did you have to read the graphic novel, or did they just kind of give you, this is what the script is, this is what we're going with?
No, I read it, but
did?
I hadn't read it before.
So what did you think?
Oh, God, I thought, are they serious? I mean, then when I heard it was going to be R-rated, it made sense. Because it's really, really dark. Really dark. But I thought, wow, I know why Mark wants to do this. It's a tour de force for him,
Yes.
But also for Batman. I mean, Batman gets challenged in such a way. So I love doing it.
So knowing, or after reading and knowing it is a very dark tale. It's one of the most tragic tales, I think, in the Batman mythos, especially for Barbara Gordon and just the whole dynamic. How did you, I guess, prepare to present this graphic novel? Because for many, it is one of the most iconic books, and many people like myself were waiting for this to become something. And I was surprised that it was actually going to be an animated film. I actually didn't think they were going to do it because it's so dark, it's so gritty, and the themes are it's outrageous. So
well, the way you prepare for any of these incarnations of an animated character really is the same, because your sense of hearing is so acute. You can hear a lie faster than you can see a lie, I think. People can mask their emotions pretty well, but you can usually hear when someone's lying. And if I wasn't to really be true to the voice, if I was to phone it in or something, the audience would hear it in a second, you know? So for me, it's always been about maintaining the integrity of the character from the very beginning. And that's something you learn in theater. You create a character, but then you've got to do them 8 times a week for a year. There's a real talent to, on the 365th day, be just as interesting as you were on the first day. So that, to me, has been the challenge of keeping him real, and it's been always just go back to that pain of childhood. Get that sound out of that, you know, that gritty, terrifying moment of his youth that still traps him emotionally. So for me, it's always been, the trick has been to maintain the integrity of the sound, not to change it over time.
So your latest project, I believe, is Justice League Action, which is coming out. Is there anything you can tell us about the new show?
Well, yeah, I mean, the wonderful thing about it is it's everything you imagine from the Batman world, in the Justice League world, but with a little twist, with a kind of a, there's a lot of humor in it. And that's not something to be afraid of. It's because a lot of people think, oh no, that's not true, that's not true. But it's an ironic twist. It's really, I think adults will get a big kick out of these shows. I can't tell you anything more, except that the cast is phenomenal. I mean, James Woods is in it. Cloris Leachman. I mean, they got great actors to do this show. And they're really interesting characters and really interesting episodes. And the interesting thing also is they're 15 minutes, and they'll be shown 2 in a half-hour block. But it's interesting, it's not like less of a show in 15 minutes because you jump right into the middle of the action. The first 10 or 12 minutes of a show is usually the setup and the introduction of the characters and stuff. That's just not in these. You just, boom, you're right in the middle of it. And then, so after 15 minutes, you feel like you've seen a full show. So it's interesting that way.
The tone of the show seems a little different, a little bit lighter than the animated series.
Well, that's why I say there is a sense of humor to it.
Right. So, is it the same Batman we see in your other shows, or are you still bringing that same Batman?
Oh, it's absolutely the same Batman.
It's the same Batman.
He's just got a little bit more of the irony that they asked me to edit out of the original one. There's a little bit more of irony in him. And it's more just the situations, because the people he's surrounded by are so bizarre. But it's the same Batman. So
clearly you are one of, or the favorite Batman, because you have the same passion.
One of them?
You're my favorite. But I can't speak for everyone. So even though I think everyone in this room is probably Kevin Conroy is your favorite
just kidding.
Batman. Maybe.
Thank you.
For me, hands down, of course. But what I love is that even when you started in '92 with the animated series, and even to now for Justice League Action, you still have that same passion for the character, and you still bring the same intensity, and you still bring to life Batman. And I think that's not.
I mean, he's such an amazing character. That's why he's lasted for 75 years. He's such a complicated guy. He's so much fun for an actor to play. There's just so much to bite into.
So since you are my favorite Batman, do you have a favorite live action Batman out of the many that have? No?
You know, I don't. No, I honestly don't. I think it was really, when I first heard they were going to have different actors doing it, I thought, well, that's really weird. You know, why don't they just establish a franchise and a character you can relate to? And then when I realized, each actor brings such a different color to the character. It's really fun. I think Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne was probably the best Bruce Wayne. I think the voice he used for Batman was really bizarre. But, you know. I think Ben Affleck, a lot of people gave him a lot of crap for getting cast in it. I know on Twitter people were going crazy about it. And I said, wait a minute, he's a wonderful actor, give him a chance. I think he surprised a lot of people. He's really wonderful. He does really well in both Batman and Bruce Wayne. So, and Michael Keaton, the first one, there was a lot about him that I liked. So I think it's fun to see different actors, what they do with it. Like Mark Hamill, I thought was hands down the most incredible Joker. And I still think that. I mean, hands down. But then when you saw what Heath Ledger did, I mean, you thought, wow, this is just this is another kind of crazy. This is, you know, he's not better than Mark, but he's just another kind of crazy, you know? So it's just so interesting to see what different actors bring to a character.
Now, you opened up with the panel saying your iconic line, I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman. And I think you say that now at every convention that you go to. I think that's almost
people
a
like to
requisite.
hear it, you know, it gets them going.
I love to hear it as well. It's
people like it, they like it.
So do you have another line, another saying from all of the years you've done Batman that is that...
Don't ask that one.
No?
I can never remember the lines.
No? Or anything that you feel is somewhat equal?
There have been some incredible
Yes.
lines, but I just can't remember them. Because, you know, with Bruce Timm writing, I mean, there have been some great lines, but I can't remember them.
That's okay, because I
Sorry.
think the I Am Vengeance is perfect on its own. I was just wondering
Thank
if there
you.
was anything that could go toe-to-toe with it. And then I just wanted to know, from voicing Batman for over 2 decades, has any, from learning about the character and who he is and what he represents, what has he taught you for your own personal life? What can you relate to? How do you relate to him as you?
That's a good question. And I think that the lesson is no matter how dark your day is, no matter how much crap you're getting, you have no right to give in to your darker impulses. You have to overcome them because someone else is having a much, much worse day than you. And you just got to remember how lucky you are. Like yesterday, just coming in here, I was driving around in circles around this place. They kept telling me to go. I was looking for the parking ramp. They kept telling me to find the south ramp. And the guys working at the entrances kept saying, no, it's around there, it's around there. I drove around this building for 45 minutes trying to find the ramp. And then I said, look, I'll just pay. I'll pay for parking. Let me go in the parking thing. And they said, no, you have to go to the south ramp. I said, take my $20. I got to get in there. Don't you understand? There's lines of people waiting. And I thought, Kevin, calm down. It's just a parking spot. You'll get in. This is going to end up on YouTube, you know. Batman has a meltdown. So it's just that to me is the lesson. It's just like, no matter how bad your day is, no matter how horrible someone is being to you, don't call them an asshole, you know. Just don't. Respect them and know that they've got problems too.
Okay, I think we'll use the rest of the time to open up to the audience. So, go first. Yes.
You mentioned that the video games, voice-wise, were very trying for you, especially hours on end, and you're switching between your real voice and the voice you're not used to talking to all the time, the Batman voice. Was there any diet, or did you drink a lot of water? Did you talk as little as possible? Is there any method you did to try to preserve your voice? Or did you ever come home talking to your friends and family in the Batman voice?
So, how did you preserve your voice?
No, there are
for the video
tricks to
games?
preserving your voice. And the biggest one is just not to use it. A lot of singers just won't talk when they're off stage. And I drink a lot of tea and a lot of tea with honey. And you notice I'm drinking water. I drink a lot of water. I drink gallons of water a day. You just got to keep fluids. And no, it's actually a good question. It's something you have to watch out for, because when it gets strained, the only way you can repair it is to not use it. And if you're not using it, you're not getting paid. So you've got to be careful, not to strain it. Yeah.
Do you find yourself able to give any advice to any students at Juilliard and the places you study?
It's funny. They asked me to come back at one point to talk to a class of students, and when I was in my 20s, and I said, I'm not much older than they are. What would I have to tell them? They said, but you just went through what they're about to go through, so you have more to tell them than anybody. And I went in and started talking to them, and 2 hours went by like that, and no one wanted to leave. It just turned out to be like an acting class. It was so much fun. I had so much fun because I started out by saying, the biggest lesson I learned right after I got out of here is that when they tell you to dare to fail, take them seriously. Because once you get out of here, you're not allowed to fail anymore. This is where you fail. This is where you experiment. This is where you make a fool of yourself. And learn. Because once you're in the real world, you can't. You should be able to. You should be able to take big risks. But you take a risk and they fire you. So you've got to know what you're doing. Robin Williams and I were roommates at Juilliard. Probably a lot of you know. We lived together for a couple of years in New York. We shared an apartment, which was ridiculous because the only person poorer than Robin at that time was me. So he was like stealing cheese from me in the refrigerator. I'd be like, there's a mouse in this house. There's a mouse, and I know his name is Robin. He would go, no, cool, man. It's cool, man. I'm not taking your cheese. Yeah. But he looked like, to watch him perform, it looked like it was spontaneous brilliance. But what it was, really, was intricately honed, crafted, choreographed characters that he'd worked on for years. I used to hear him in his room doing these characters in the middle of the night. Oh yes, very, very, very good, very nice, very nice. He'd be doing like Indian accents or French accents. He'd be doing characters, old man, and I'd hear, mommy, mommy. And he realized he was doing like a 6-year-old kid. He'd be doing these voices and he was just practicing. And then in mime class, we took a French mass class together. He would create these incredible characters that I would then see 20 years later in his stand-up act. And I think, I remember when he came up with that character. But it looked like it just was something that he'd invented on the spot. It takes a lot of crafting to become an actor. And it's in acting school that you really have that chance to fail and make a fool of yourself. And in the real world, you really aren't given that opportunity because you'll be fired. So that was the big advice I gave them.
Out of all the Batman projects, what would you say is the very best one that you ever done?
Wow. I always think the one I just did was the best one. So The Killing Joke right now, I would say, is the best one. But my favorite ones have been the ones where Batman's sense of reality was altered somehow. And he went in. He's such a complicated character that every time he has to go inside his own mind or his own past, like in Perchance to Dream or in Dreamscape, anyone where in one of them I got to play Bruce Wayne Batman, young Bruce Wayne when he went into his childhood, and then old Thomas Wayne, his father. So I was playing 4 different voices, and they all had to be believably related, but distinct. That, for actors, it's just fun to be challenged. So those to me are the most fun. The ones where Batman goes into those dream kind of worlds. And there have been a lot of those, so it's been fun. But Dreamscape and Perchance to Dream are two that I really loved.
One of the best things about the animated series in Justice League was the relationship between Batman and Superman. And I was just wondering what your take was.
George Newbern did the original Superman, and then Tim Daly did it too. And I loved working with both of them. And I don't know if you've seen, Tim has the Daily Show the podcast he does, and we did an episode where I was kind of haunting him. Did you ever see that? It's really, It was really fun. It was so much fun to do. He's a lot of fun. I feel sorry for Superman. He's such a boring guy. You know? He's so square, you know? And Batman is so richly colored, you know, that I feel sorry for him, you know.
So, related note, and going back to Juilliard, did you, Batman, ever hang out with Superman, Christopher Reeve?
Christopher was there the same time I was there. He was a couple of years ahead of me. When I went in, I was 17. So that's why I was there with a lot of people who were much older than me. A lot of people went in as postgraduates and stuff. I left high school early and finished up early, and then moved into New York and have been supporting myself since then. My family kind of disintegrated when I was in high school. So I was 17. So Chris was, I don't know, maybe 22, 23. And he, at one point, wanted to, he was going to rent an apartment in Soho, this really bizarre area downtown. This is the early 70s. And I thought, my God, in the warehouse area? What do you want to live in there? So I went down and I looked at it, and he was interested in sharing it with me, but it was $400 a month, and I couldn't swing $200. I had a room in a rooming house at that point for $100 a month. $100 a month in New York. So I didn't get to live with Chris. But then Robin and I ended up getting an apartment the following year. But yeah, Chris was around Juilliard at that time. Just unbelievable to think that they're both gone already. I mean, they were such good guys, genuinely good people, really nice people. I mean, when Chris broke his back, a lot of people don't know, he had great insurance. Screen Actors Guild is wonderful insurance, but it has $1 million cap on it. Well, with spinal cord injury and 24-hour nursing, you go through $1 million pretty quickly. And Robin guaranteed his medical bills. That's just the kind of guy he was. So they were both really extraordinary people.
How was your time and experience working with Mark Hamill again on Killing Joke, knowing this would be a rated R movie? And can you end with saying, because I'm Batman?
Well, it doesn't change the way you approach a role knowing it's going to be R-rated. I mean, we always approach every role, any of the actors, the same way, with the same passion. The rating's determined by the script and the way they're, you know, what the situations they place the characters in. So I approached it the same way. Unfortunately, this was unique because Mark was doing Star Wars, and so he was in England, and we didn't work together on any of the Killing Joke. But because we'd worked together so much over the years, I knew what he was going to do, and he knew what I was going to do. But it was an unusual situation where we actually didn't get to work together. But because I'm Batman, I was really good.
So you've been mentioning how when you're with Justice League, you feed off of each other when you're doing scenes with multiple people.
Yeah.
In Justice League, when Lord Batman was present and you were arguing with yourself, were you able to keep the two Batmen separate? Is there the same voice, or was that confusing?
No, I'm a really wonderful actor to work with. I had some of my favorite scenes in that episode. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's what I meant when I was talking about Perchance to Dream and Dreamscape. Episodes where you get to do sort of different manifestations of your own reality. They're just so much fun for an actor to play with. They're challenging. Like in Perchance to Dream, I said to Andrea, "Can I do the voices in real time? And then we'll go back and we'll do each character separately. But she said, you mean play the scenes with yourself? I said, yeah, it'll be fun. Let's just see what happens. So she let me do it. And then we did clean takes that they, in case it didn't work out. But it's just, actors love to be challenged, So that episode was more challenging for me. So it was fun. The last play I did was Arthur Miller's last play in New York. I worked with Arthur Miller, called The Last Yankee, and I played the lead role, The Last Yankee. And I had such an amazing time working with him on that. He said something to me. At one point, he was giving out notes after rehearsal one night, just before we opened, and he said, "And Kevin, I don't have anything to say to you. You seem to know the character better than I do." And I thought, oh my God, would you write that down? I want to be able to prove to people you said that to me. I mean, it was such an honor to work with the legend. No, I haven't in a while. And I got it. You're right, I should. I have no excuse. Been lazy. Yeah. I did the Globe. I did King Lear. I did Edgar and King Lear. And I did Much Ado About Nothing with John Glover. I was Claudio and he was Benedict. Yeah, I did a season at the Globe, but that was a few years ago.
What are your thoughts on the Lego Batman?
I've never actually seen Lego Batman because I'm not in it. Yeah, I mean, most people will use tea with honey and lemon. It's just a really soothing way to lubricate your voice. And I drink tea generally anyway. But yeah, honey and lemon are great.
What was your reaction when you first met Mark Hamill after the three original Star Wars?
When I first worked with him? I was shocked, actually, because I had never met Mark, and I only knew him as Luke Skywalker. And Luke Skywalker, he's kind of like Superman, He's just, you know what I mean? He's just a nice young man. And that's the character. And so that's the image Mark projected. So I thought, well, that's an odd choice for Joker, And then he came in and he revealed himself as a character actor. Mark is a character actor, and he's most at home doing characters. I think actually Star Wars didn't serve him well when he started out because it pigeonholed him in something that wasn't necessarily what he's best at. He was great at that, but it's like Kevin Kline. I knew Kevin Kline at Juilliard. Kevin Kline was always getting cast as young leading men. Kevin Kline's a character actor. He's better at that. He's always much better, like in A Fish Called Wanda. Remember that performance? He's there's certain actors that because they're handsome and because they look like leading men, they get those roles. That's just what they're put in. But their heart, their soul, it may be something else. And I think Mark is one of those people. He was just a really good-looking young actor, so they put him in that role. He did a great job at it, but he's so much more than that, you know? He's more Batman than Superman, you know? So that's why he was so great at Joker.
So with the death of Bruce's dad, what kind of adult do you think would have been if Thomas Wayne hadn't died and he still has his intellect as he is, as a regular adult without becoming Batman?
Thomas Wayne, I think, would have become what Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. was. That sort of patrician, older, caring, paternal character. He's a very idealized father. That's the way he's written in the stories, and I think that's what he would have become if he had matured.
You were talking about how you guys fed off each other in the room.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of blooper moments going on in there, like a couple of takes to get through because you guys are having a little too much fun?
Oh, yeah. My favorite one was, this became traditional after a while because it was so funny. The director is Andrea Romano. And they have you do, as I say, those recovery moans to make sure the character's alive after they're dead. So you're going like, you know, you get kicked, you get punched, you fall down, and you go, he's like, Andrea. I put that one day at the end of a recovery groan because I realized this sounds like sex. There's no way around the fact that this doesn't sound like sex. So I put it in there. Well, she fell out of her chair. Bruce Timm went crazy. So that became a tradition. So that every time then after that I had a fight, and I'd be like, I'd hear from Andrea, and then you say, I'd say, Andrea. So after a couple of years of this, she had a Christmas reel. And the reel was just, Andrea, Andrea, Andrea. It was hysterical. So things like that do happen. And it's great because it keeps it, you know, cracking up in a room keeps your juices going. It keeps you from falling into a rut. So, and I was the one constant between all the shows. So Andrea loved the fact that I would do that. And she said to me at one point, she said, I know what you're doing. You're doing this stuff on purpose because of all the new people who are in the room, to get them to laugh. I said, exactly. I'm getting the, you know. She said, I love it. She said, that's why I never stop you. She said, we love when you do this stuff because, you know, it breaks the ice and it makes people know, oh, it's okay to have fun here. And then you get a better performance out of people.
All the way in the back. Yes.
So in the episode where you had to sing for Percy, singing, how did you prepare for that?
Andrea put that in because she knows I like to sing. And I think Bruce Timm thought this was a crazy idea, actually. But then when they thought, Am I Blue? I mean, that's such a perfect song for Batman. So, no, we just recorded it in the room. It was just done live. It was fun. It was fun. No, I don't think that. No.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Yes.
This isn't to call anybody out, but when there's times where Mark can't come into the studio, they get Troy Baker, or since Tara Strong's kind of replaced
Arlene Sorkin, yeah.
is there anybody that you like that comes in to replace you when you can't come in to do Batman, like Will Arnett or...
That's a horrible question. I'm so disappointed in you. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, yeah. man, damn it.
Okay.
Can you describe your experience working with Adam West doing the Great Ghost?
Oh, God. What a good question.
Nice.
Yeah. What a wonderful man. What a wonderful man. He's such a gentleman and he's such a gracious. And he came in and I was like, you know. He said, oh, come on. He said, have fun with it. He said, I had fun with it for years. Hope you have a good time. He's so gracious and old school, like Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. Really wonderful guy to work with. And very generous actor again. Andrea doesn't cast people who aren't. It's wonderful. She's got a very good shit detector in terms of people, you know.
Okay.
Am I blue? No. Is that it?
That's it.
Good?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's all the time we have. But thank you for coming.
everybody.
Thank you, Kevin Conroy, for coming. Thank you so much.